Hi and welcome to this first video on this course where you'll be learning about how to use NetSupport School as a teacher. So the first thing to do really is let's get started and get the NetSupport School tutor console up and running. We do that simply by double clicking on the icon on your desktop, which will load it up, and you're given an opportunity right from the outset to choose the mode upon which you wish to use the suite of tools. Now if you're new to the product, then you're probably going to want to just start at the bottom here where it says a focused set of classroom features to get you started. And as you sort of move through, and it's sort of represented by these icons here on the left hand side as well. So the higher up the level you go here, when you load the tutor console, the more options and features and functionality you'll have available to you. But we're going to try with the easy mode first of all, with some of our favorites. So we'll do that by clicking here where it says a focused set of classroom features to get you started. We'll click on there, and the first thing we need to do once we go in now is to pop our name in. So I'll just drop my name in here. Let's say I'm teaching a year 10 class. I'm going to put 10 biology. You could put in whatever you want to in there. It could be linked to your class code on Sims or whatever it is that you've got. But you do that, then you choose who you're connecting to. So I'm going to connect to this here. And notice the get student names bit down the bottom here. This will prompt my students to enter their names as I go through this process here. And if I want to make this, if this is sort of a standard thing, I didn't want to have to do this every single time. All I've got to do at the bottom here is just to not show this dialogue again. I won't tick that in case we need to come back in again. There are more options here, but essentially this is how we get into the very basic introductory bit. So I'll click OK now. Do that, it'll find the computers in my computer suite, and there they all are. On the screens around the room, all of my students will now be being asked what their names are and so forth and so on, and those will start to be populated as my students fill them in. So you can see Alan Baldwin and Kate Notty are already signed in as part of my register here within NetSupport School. We've got plenty of people joining me. Thank you, students. And so I'll hit close now while they're getting on and doing that. And I'm now entered into this easy mode here within NetSupport School. So NetSupport School really does have you covered, whatever your sort of confidence and competence levels are with your use of technology. And sometimes it's not actually about your confidence or competence, it's actually about what's most appropriate for you in the classroom whilst you're working. This view that you can see here on the screen right now is what we call our easy mode. And in here you can see most of our sort of favourite, most commonly used and frequently thought of as being our best features tied in here. So often when you want to draw the attention of your students back to you as teacher in front of the class, you want to lock their screen. So very simply we can do that just by clicking on lock all, and that will lock all of our students' screens. I can blank all those screens as well. If I want to stop my students from using the internet, I can block all of that. And if I want to sort of get a sort of a temperature test on the feedback and well-being in my classroom, I can do that there as well. There's some other options in here as well. If we're using NetSupport School as part of a language lab, for example, I can mute the audio. I can also get student names if they haven't come through before, and if I want to, I can end the class. You'll see there's a notification here in the bottom left which says that I've got 22 students in my class, and if I want to close it all down at the end, I can very easily do so by hitting quit down the bottom. Now, why do we have these different modes? Well, you know, different people have different levels of confidence and competence in using technology. As I said earlier in this little video, sometimes that's down to actual choice. It's actually, I don't need all the the huge range of features that are in NetSupport School, so I don't want the advanced mode. I'm just happy using this easy mode just to help me sort of keep on track and keep my students focused during the lesson. Back quite a few years ago now, Amanda Nash and Klein developed this sort of structure for thinking around teacher confidence and competence, sort of ranging from 1 to 4, where 1 is your survival mode. You then sort of move up to mastery, impact, and innovation. And bearing that in mind when you're thinking about the teachers you're working with, if you're delivering training yourself, for example, on how to use any type of software, quite frankly, when you're working in this sort of way, be mindful of the confidence levels of your colleagues as to whether how you introduce these different things to them. So if you're working with someone who might be at survival mode, let's say, who's a little bit scared about using technology, is maybe excited by the potential but not too sure about how to go about doing it, and you want to show them how to use the easy mode, bear in mind those survival colleagues that you have, and try to incorporate that thinking into how you then deliver and show the various features across the other aspects of NetSupport School. We'll be diving a little bit later on into the intermediate mode and looking at the advanced features as well. But for now, that's a little introduction there to the easy mode on NetSupport School. So now that we've had a little look at the easy mode in NetSupport School, let's dive into the intermediate mode and see what offers and opportunities and features and functionalities there are inside that layout and view of NetSupport School. So as before, we simply go to the NetSupport School tutor console just here. And as before, we get to choose from one of our three options, the easy mode, intermediate or advanced. And this time we're going to go for intermediate, which is this option here in the middle. All of the primary features used in the classroom. So we go into here and we're provided with a few options here when we first get started. So I'm just going to click on start to start my class, and just like we saw in easy mode when we first loaded it up, it's brought through and it brought us to a very, very similar screen to what we saw before. A few additional features. You can put sort of lesson end times in if you want to. You can set your learning objectives and outcomes here if you want to. You can collect student names as we did before, and you can also create a journal. The journal is a really interesting thing that we'll dive into a little bit later on, but for now I won't tick that box. I'm just going to go to NetSupport and click OK and connect to the computers in my classroom. And what we can see once that's happened is my class already in place. Now it's asking me if I want to register my students. We can use a variety of features in here to get their names from their logons and so forth and so on. I'm not going to do that right now, but if you wanted to, then obviously very simple to do that. You can say tick the boxes if you want their first name and surname and so forth and so on. Then you can just hit the register button once you've ticked those boxes, and all those names will come through. So what the benefit of doing that is when they have those names on there and they filled them in, their names will actually appear under each of these different screens that you can see here. By default, it picks up the name of the actual PC. That's why you can see DRPCD012 just here, because that's the name of that particular computer. If we were to ask the students to log in as a register, and we'll see this a few times in other videos later on in the course, but as that's happening, so those names will come through, and it'll be much easier for them for you to identify which device is being used by which students. But as you'll know, if you're often working in the same PC suite with your students and you've got your seating plan sorted and all those different things, you'll know where your students are in the classroom anyway. But it's there. It's a really lovely little tool to have in the suite, and that's that. So I'll just close that for a second. And one thing that will come up as default as well will be this tutor assistant that you can see here in the top right hand corner. Now this is a lovely little feature whereby you can use an additional version of NetSupport School as a teacher if you're walking around the classroom, these sorts of things, so you can actually get into and access your tutor machine from a remote location on another device should you be walking around a classroom or working across split classrooms, those sorts of things. For now, I'm just going to choose not now, but show this next time here. And now that I've done that, I can see all of my student screens in the classroom, and as you might expect on a product such as this, in a Windows environment, you've got your ribbon across the top here with all of your different options available to you, some of those being more obvious than others. In here in its main space, you can see all of the screens of the students in the classroom, and then aside here we've got a variety of options for how we can view things in our main pane. So we can monitor student machines, we can see what websites students are visiting. So I'll just go onto here. You can see these are all the different students here. We can change the view mode here to look at it different ways. We can see the approved websites are listed down the bottom here, and the restricted websites are on the side over here. And underneath that, we've then got things that allow us to see what applications students are using. And again, you can have approved and restricted applications, and you can add those really simply into your list by going to the plus button and adding the applications in, or on the plus button here, and that will restrict that application as well. And once those have been added into your list, you can allow all, or allow only approved only, or block any restricted ones, so forth and so on. And what's also nice is you can see the tools that people are using just by the icons that are next to each of the little avatars that we have here. So I can see this student's clearly on PowerPoint, this student's on Edge. If you hover over these things as well, it tells you what they're actually looking at and doing whilst you're on there as well. Got Word there. If you weren't clear on what the icon actually was, you can just hover and it tells you what they are. Underneath that, we have the opportunity to do some surveys, and we'll dig deeper into that later on. Okay, and at the bottom here is where you can manage all of your printing, your printer queues, and all of these things. And again, we'll dig into those things in a bit more detail later on in this series of videos. Across the top here, we've got a variety of options on our toolbar, and each of these gives us different types of functionalities and activities and so forth and so on. So from the very first icon just here on the left-hand side, it's the Manage Class icon. We click onto it, we can refresh the list of students, which you might want to do if somebody new has come to the classroom, just logged in, those sort of things. You can end the class, you can disconnect all of them and choose a new one if you've got your classes set up. If you wanted to get into advanced mode, we can click onto here and that will launch us into advanced mode. We can view a client if we actually have one selected. So if I select that one there, that now becomes ungrayed out, and I could then view that client and it comes up and I can see the student's device here. You'll notice there's a whole series of other options once we're actually viewing a student device, and there'll be a little video just on that a little bit later on so I can dig into those with you a bit further. We can send files to our students, we can lock their screens, we can unlock their screens, we can set the web access permissions through this option here, so unrestricted website access, only ones from that approved list, blocking restricted and restrict all internet use. There are lots of things we can do with all of that. The next option across is the show button, and that enables me as teacher to show my screen to all of my clients in my classroom. That's really, really useful in lots of different ways. Sometimes a student can't see the board. I remember in a classroom of mine, there was a pillar in the way, and so often students couldn't see the board. But this is a great feature which enables students to still be able to see your screen on their screen, regardless of whether or not they can see a projected screen somewhere else. In terms of power management in the classroom, if it's first thing in the morning, we can use the console to power on all of the devices in the room or set up within your class. Alternatively, end of the day or at lunchtime or whenever, if you wanted to, you can also power off those machines as well. And if you want to, you can log a variety of different students' workstations in as well. You can also equally log them out. As we saw earlier with the easy mode, with the feedback and wellbeing options, there's an option to get some feedback from your students in the classroom in here as well. You can send a message to selected clients. So I could choose the one chosen here. I could go to send a message, and that would go to just the one. You can actually do things like control click. I can sort of send it, let's say these three students have all finished their work and I want to send them a message to say well done and tell them to go on to the extension activity, let's say for example. I can do that very simply through the send a message option just here. And I can also start chat either with an individual client or with multiples as well. So welcome to this short video. In the previous video, you watched me run through all the features that are available in a lightweight level. We'll dig into them more deeply in just a few more videos' time, but that was showing you the intermediate mode. To move from intermediate mode to advanced mode is super easy. All you need to do is move your mouse to the toolbar. On the left-hand side, in the top left-hand corner, you'll see the option Advanced Mode. Click on Advanced Mode, and once you do that, you'll be taken through to the Advanced Mode. And as you'll see, you have far more features available to you now on the toolbar across the top here. What we're going to do now in our subsequent videos is to work through each of those options in turn to explain what each of them are and how you use them in the classroom. So in this short video, we can have a look at the third option across from the top left-hand side here, which says Student Register. Now, you'll remember there's an opportunity to run a student register when you first load up NetSupport School, but if you didn't do that or want to try it again, or someone comes late, or you want to get into those options again, here in the advanced mode, it's a really easy few clicks just to get into the student register options. So to do this, we simply click on Student Register, and we choose the option Sign In. It says prompt the students to register. Once you've done that, you'll be taken through to the screen that you've just seen on a previous video. You can pop some information about yourself, so you can put your name, your class, the room that you might be in, any objectives for the lesson. You can make it auto-save, all these sort of things. But the important thing is you sort of choose the actual details you want from your student. So let's just go for first name and surname. I don't want their ID or their class or anything. You might do, and that's fine. If you do, simply choose those options. And now I'm just going to go on to register. Once I've done that, the register, and you can see it appearing on all of the screens on the viewable area here on this dashboard. And as they appear on the screen, so different students are completing that in, filling their names in, so forth and so on. So you can see we've got John Matt just here, Cole Fit, Katie Jane, so forth and so on. You can also see them populating in the screen just here, and as the students fill them all in, so all of those names will then appear and be there as part of your register. That's really useful for you as a teacher, because the way in which the screens are displayed here on this dashboard are probably not how you've got your computer set up in your classroom. So it's very easy then for you to know who is doing what, where and when. So let's say I can see that Ollie Smith over here is on looking at what looks to be like the BBC News. That might not be what you want Ollie Smith to do, so you could perhaps do something like lock his workstation, then go over and have a little chat to him, keeping socially distanced if needs be. Yeah, really nice and useful feature using the student register, not designed to replace that register you take each lesson inside something like Sims, but just a nice way of knowing who's sat where and when inside your virtual classroom on your screen as you're managing your class and the devices they're using. So that's the student register inside the advanced mode inside NetSupport School. Now, there were some other options inside there. So just going back to student register, you can see you can get a registration report if you want to, and there's an option there to do a quick print as well if you want to print it out, if you need a hard copy. And if it's an end of a lesson and you want to get the machines ready for a new group of students to come in, where they can put their names in again, and then you can simply go to sign out and that will unregister those students from your class. And there you have it, student register in NetSupport School. In this video, I'm going to show you a lovely, nifty little way to make your experience in NetSupport School a little bit more personalised. Now, for me, there are some tools across this toolbar at the top here that I use all the time, but there are some that I don't use that often. So what I can do is I can actually personalise this toolbar across the top here with all these lovely icons just by simply right-clicking, not hiding, but going to Customise just here. Once you've loaded the Customise option, there's a bunch of things you can do. Number one, you can look at the current buttons, and if you wanted to sort of group together your most frequently used tools, let's say, I use the quick launch tool loads, and I want it to be, really prominent, so I can move it to the far left. What I can do is I can just go like this and scroll through. I go to the quick launch option when I find it, I click on it, and I can now use these buttons here to just promote that. And as I do that, you'll see it's moving through and going higher and higher up the list like so. And so once I've got it to the beginning, let's have it next to, let's say, random students. I hit OK, and what you'll now notice is that it's moved from where it was just here all the way over here with my regularly used tools just over here. So that's a great little feature there where we can customize and get our layout exactly as we want it for us. Alternatively, there are some buttons available on the toolbar that don't get put there as standard, but again, they might be things you might want to use on a regular basis yourself. For example, you might want to regularly announce things in your classroom because you've actually got your NetSupport School set up across a few classrooms and you regularly want to make an announcement that all students can hear regardless of their geography along the corridor or across the classrooms that you're actually using. It could be that you want to block all the internet access quite frequently, so forth and so on. So as you can see, as I scroll through slowly here, there are a whole bunch of extra icons and options that you can put onto your toolbar. Frequently used one is power on and power off. Really useful for me in my IT classroom as a computing teacher. So I can add the power on, so I can go like that, and I can go to add, and go to power on and go to add. And I actually want it to have its own little sort of special section, so I can actually even add a little separator in there if I want to. So I go to separator and put that in, and I can then actually go to here and pop another separator in if I want to. If it's in the wrong place, what we can do is we can just move some of our options around like so, and now our power options are both in there together. I hit OK, and we'll now see power off and power on have their own little section down the side over here. It's up to you how you arrange your toolbar. I just love the fact that you can do it if you want to do it. How great is that? So in this short video, we're going to have a little exploration of this main viewable area here. Okay, and this gives us all the information we want about each of our different students in our class. We can see what's going on their screen as they're working. I can see Sarah Todd's got Word open and is doing some typing in here. I can see that John Matt is on the BBC Bite Size website looking at some things on there. Charlie's looking at some news over here. Barry's in Excel doing a periodic table by the looks of it, so forth and so on. It helps you keep a sort of a check on the activities of your learners in your classroom based upon the activities you want them to be doing. And it's lovely to just see at a glance. If you've asked students to work on an essay, then you should probably see lots of instances of Word open, something like that, and maybe some appropriate websites for some research, those sorts of things. If you see a student off task, then there's a variety of options that you can sort of deploy in order to have a word with and sort things out with that particular learner. But just digging into all these options that are here. If you want to see any of these in a bit more detail, you can zoom in. There's a lovely little option at the bottom here, so we can increase and decrease the size of the thumbnails that are on the screen. If you've got a huge class, you can make them quite small. If you've got sort of the size class that I've got, you can bring it up to about this size, so you can see everything in one go. And you can use your roller on your mouse to sort of scroll down within that view if you've got some a little bit lower down, like so. You've got some other options in here as well, so you can sort of turn applications, show the active applications that are happening, and it'll sort of add that little extra thing in the top left-hand corner. Often you can sort of work it out for yourself, but sometimes it's nice to have that extra option there. And you click it again, and that will remove that from there. The next option across is websites, and by choosing the option websites, you'll then be able to see what sites they're actually on from the little icon file that resides on each website that your students may visit. So we can easily see some are on the BBC, some are using Google Search, so forth and so on. You can also have both of those on at the same time, and that's quite nice because the icons are on adjacent sides, opposite sides to the little thumbnails that we've got here as well. And then we've got the options in here to zoom in to student windows if you want to do it that way. Alternatively, the way that I like to do it actually is just to sort of use a slider or just click onto the auto button, and the auto button will make it so that all of your screens are then viewable in the area you have in front of you. And that is how you sort of navigate and work with your main workspace here in the NetSupport Teacher Console. If you hover over, like you see, like I've got just here, as you hover over each of these, it'll zoom in a little bit onto each of those two. So in this short video, we're going to look at how we can sort of dig a little bit deeper into a student's screen, because sometimes a student might actually need some help. And, yes, you can go over to that student machine, but in these times of pandemics and all of these sorts of things, actually, it's really nice to be able to sort of do these things remotely, albeit you might be in the same classroom. So let's say, for example, one of my students is doing some work and they need some help. And so what I can do is I can just simply double click on any of these thumbnails that we can see here. So let's say it's Matt Jones who needs some help with Excel. Okay, so I just double click onto Matt Jones like so, and his screen will then come up. Now, one thing that's important to remember once we're actually inside here is we've got, just like we have inside the main console for your teacher, in here we've got a variety of options on the toolbar here as well. I'm just going to run through those with you very quickly now. The first one is the opportunity for changing how we view things. Okay, so we can have it so we're sharing the screen. That means we can both use the mouse and the keyboard at the same time. If it's a behavior kind of thing, it's not really, Matt wanting some help, Matt's being a bit inappropriate, then I can actually just go to control, and that will completely lock Matt out of being able to use his keyboard or mouse. Sometimes, though, it's actually just, and it's nice to use this mode as well, actually just digging that little bit deeper into what students are doing in the classroom. And we can just go into watch mode and we can watch what they're doing. The next option across, though, is the one that I always jump to first myself, because sometimes the screen resolution means you can't see everything in one go. So I love this option here for scale to fit. And what that will do is it will automatically resize the viewable area here. Even if now I've got a little bit of space on the side over here, that doesn't matter. What's important is I can see everything on my student screen in one go. The next option here takes things to full screen mode, so I can click on here and that'll move things up into full screen mode. I won't actually do that, but you can see that we can do that. Another option we've got is to send some files. So let's say I've got a file that I want to send to Matt. Matt's lost his worksheet or can't find it on the network or something like that. I can simply go to File Transfer. I can find the file wherever it is stored, and I can then just send that across to Matt through that option there. It could be that Matt's quite a way across the classroom. I don't want to disturb other learners in the classroom as well, and so what I can do is I can simply go to the chat option, and I can quietly have a little conversation about the problems that Matt's facing with his work through using the chat features that are just here. If there's a student who's got a good example to go alongside that as well, I can always invite another student or another teacher or somebody else to come in and feed into that conversation as well, should that be appropriate. I can just send a quick message to say, Matt, I'm just checking your work, whatever you want to do. That's different to the chat. That will just display a message for the student to see. It could be that I want to actually launch an application, and I can do that by going to launch application, and it could be that I want Matt to take some notes whilst I'm doing this. I could just go to launch application. I could add a notepad or something like that to the list there, and it's very easy to add an app or a program into your approved tools list. You simply type in the name of the tool you want to allow, so notepad.exe, hit OK, and that's now in that list, and I can just go to launch, and that would then launch Notepad, and you can see it's now launched on Matt's device for him to make some notes whilst we're actually talking through all these different things. I can also look at the clipboard just here, and I can send things from my clipboard and retrieve things from their clipboard, and we can have that on or off as an option in there. If you're using the NetSupport School tool as a thing to work inside a language lab, then we've got options in here for turning on and off audio, and we can talk and listen and so forth and so on. The listening option is fantastic when you are in a language lab. You can listen in really clearly and easily to the pronunciations of your students who are undertaking their learning activities within inside NetSupport School, which I think is absolutely winner option. So powerful. We've got a variety of different settings in here which you probably won't want to go into, but we'll have a quick peek so you can see there are lots of options in here that are available, but for the most part most of us won't want to do anything with any of that at all, so might well be an opportunity to just leave that well alone and save that for our technical support team. If you want to, let's say the Matt has been really naughty, and you want to, you've called your senior colleagues, and you want someone to pop them into isolation or whatever the reason is. But what we can simply do is go to log out, and that would log Matt out from that particular device. If we wanted to, we can capture a screenshot. Let's say actually Matt's been doing some fantastic work. He's the first to finish. We want to get some peer feedback, these sorts of things. What I can also do is I can capture a screenshot by going to capture screenshots, and there we go, and I can save that screenshot as whatever name I want to, wherever I want to save it, hit save, and that's now saved that screenshot. Another lovely feature with inside this viewing bit here as well is the opportunity and ability to annotate the screen. So useful. So all we need to do that is go to annotate, and once we're in the annotate option, we'll see that my mouse pointer is now changed. I can now click and drag and point at things. I can change all these different options that are here. I can write over the top like so. There are lots of options available, and it's not just this sort of line tool. If you go, you can see a floating toolbar here in the middle. I'll move it down here so you can see it more easily. I can save these things to file. I can clear, undo, redo things on the edit menu. I can change my tool. I can put in squares and shapes and fill colors. I've got a rubber and so forth and so on. I can change the color that I'm using. I can change the width of the lines, and I can even do some typing over the top as well and choose different fonts to go with that as well. So a really powerful tool, and sort of accompanies a whole group of really useful tools in the viewable area just here. So that's how you remote control a student device and all the things you can do in between there. And whilst I'm talking, you may notice that your learners have a student toolbar too. Don't worry, we'll be covering that in a very short while in one of our upcoming videos later on in the course. So in this next video, we're going to look at the show menu. Now the show menu is one of the most favoured features inside NetSupport School. It is really, really useful. By clicking on it, you'll see the opportunities that are available to you. Firstly, you can show your desktop to all students. That's really useful for all number of reasons where you want to show your screen. You can also show a specific video to the clients that you have selected. Now that could be everybody, or as you've seen previously, you can control and click on certain students and show things to exactly just those students. Let's say they've completed some work and you want to differentiate and give something additional to access and view and those sort of things as an extension activity. That's a lovely way of doing that. And there are other options in here like show replay, replay files. If you wanted to sort of demonstrate something using the show your desktop or whatever it is you want to show, if you go to create a replay down here, that will mean that students can then replay that demonstration over and over again without actually having to sort of speak to you and ask you to show them again and things. You can also use this feature to show an application to students in the class, and you can also use it to exhibit students' machines within your class as well. Why don't we try that now actually? So John Matz, for example, has got a great little bit of 3D work going on in Paint 3D down here. So I can go onto my select a student bit just here and I can choose John Matz, and once I've chosen John, I can then go to exhibit, and that will then exhibit John's machine to every other machine inside my classroom. Just like we had in the previous video where we saw the ability to manipulate the student screen when you're viewing it like this, we can do similar things here now as well when we're exhibiting a student's machine too. So we can suspend it, so we can pause it, we can stop it, we can share control. I can make it so I'm just watching, but using the feature here to send it to every student's screen in my class. I can take control of it. I can also scale to fit like I would have done previously to make sure everything's viewable to everybody. I can also send it full screen if I want to. And most importantly, I think we can also choose to annotate. So just as we saw before on the previous video where we were able to annotate the screen with an individual student when we took control, we can do the same sort of thing here on the student screen whilst it's being exhibited as well. So I can draw lines, I can write text, I can change the font. That annotate toolbar is still present. As you can see, moving it around, we can change the colours and the tools and fonts and all these different things. They're all available in there. So that's exhibiting a student's work, and I think that's a really lovely, lovely feature inside here. If I just jump back into the show menu option, there are a variety of more options inside here. But why are these things important? Well, many of you will have heard of the Education Endowment Foundation. They've looked at the things that work when it comes to deploying and using technology effectively in the classroom. And with this feature here, this really resonates with that idea of that they talk about in their 2019 report, for example, where they talk about where technology can be used to reinforce, enhance, and make better explanations and modelling. And this is just a fantastic tool to facilitate those sorts of conversations. So what else can you do? Well, let's just say, we're working with a small group of students. We don't want to move around the room because of social distancing, all those sorts of things, but your students do have their own headsets they're using, so forth and so on. So we can, if you want to, open up the audio features so we can all hear each other and they can hear me, most importantly, whilst I'm sharing and doing things as well. We've also got opportunities for changing the display mode, and you saw, whilst we're actually exhibiting something, we can change it to full and windowed and so forth and so on, but we can set that before we actually start if we want to. Additionally, we can create a replay, and the replay file is the replay of the demonstration that was shown using the show opportunities that are available here on show menu. We can also restrict internet access while students are viewing a show and those sorts of things as well. And there are some more options here available in more. Now, I will go into here, but as you'll see from the things that come up, it's probably quite likely you most likely won't want to change any of the things there, but it's important sometimes just to dig into these things so you know what's available to you should you want to play around with those sorts of things that are there. So that's the show menu, super useful, and this is how we do it as teacher. So let's say for argument's sake, I am teaching a lesson remotely, or I've sent some work in, some cover work or something like that, and I want the students to have all access to that, but I'm not available. So I've got an Oak Academy lesson that I've brought up, and all I've got to do is go to show my desktop to all my students. So I do that like so, and now that's shown, here's the Oak Academy lesson, and I can work through all these different things. The students can view it with me all in real time, and so forth and so on. I can go next and move to the next bit, and I can talk through the slides that are here. They can all hear me because I've turned on the audio feature so they can hear me while I'm demonstrating and all these different things. I've turned the create replay option on so students can replay the things if I want them to during all this as well. And when you're finished, it's simply a case of just actually ending the show. So we can do that by simply going into our icons here. We'll see the little play button here. I can double click on that, and I can then choose to end the lesson or the show like so, and that brings it all back again. I can now see all the thumbnails, the students have had their lesson, the replay file's been created, and everything's there as need to be. Next up, we've got something which I think is a fantastic tool available as part of NetSupport School, and it's a cornerstone of every teacher's classroom. We need, as teachers, to present and share and explain ideas, and the ability to do so in a virtual sense, not on an actual physical whiteboard, but in a virtual whiteboard, is a great opportunity for us to do things that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't so easily available in technology, linking into that Ruben Puentedura SAMA model. So directly inside NetSupport School, we do have a whiteboarding tool, and the whiteboarding tool is accessible from the option here on the bottom left of all these options down the left-hand side. Choose the whiteboarding option, and it'll probably come up straight away and tell us, which it has done, that it's not actually showing on student machines right now. But I have prepared for this little video by dropping in something that I can actually annotate on the whiteboard. So if I just go OK now very quickly. I won't untick the box, or sorry, tick the box, because I want that to appear in the future for future demonstrations and things. But currently, no students can see the whiteboard at all. So to make that happen, it's very easy. All I need to do is go to Show down here, and that will then make this visible to every student inside my classroom. So what I can do from this point then, if I just jump over to here, you can now see that the whiteboard is visible and viewable on every student's device. This is great. So what I can do is I can now start using some of the tools that are available down the bottom here. So I'm going to go to Tools, for example. I'm going to choose the brush tool, and what I can now do is I can sort of draw a little line over here and point at that, and I could then go to Tool and go to Text and click where I want to type, and I could then sort of create a little box there and type sun. Equally, I could have just gone to the tool just here and gone to brush and tried to, write sun nicely whilst using my mouse. There are many ways in which we can do all of that. Whilst we're working across these options here, to bring in images like I have done just here. And interestingly as well, you can just copy and paste from other sources. If you have got an image available somewhere else, or you're finding one on the internet, you can copy and paste and do that and bring it straight in if you want to. But you might want to go to File and Load Image. It might be this is a great whiteboard with some great annotations on. You want to actually save that and share it to your class in some way, shape or form. Equally, on the edit menu, we've got options to undo, copy, paste, insert another image, and we can also clear the whiteboard from here as well. We've already seen the tool menu here, but let's just go through some of these other options here. So you can, for example, use the eraser to rub out mistakes. You can highlight things if you want to as well. That's why we added the text, if you remember before, and so forth and so on. Lots of different shaping tools available here. And if you wanted to move things around a little bit, we can go to the selection tool and select things and resize and move them should we want to. We can change the color of things on the color menu, and you can see there's lots of different colors available there. We can change our line widths, we can change our font, and if we make a mistake, we can also undo that as well. You'll notice the students are on the right hand side over here as well, and so by selecting any of these students over here on the right hand side, what I can also do is bring other groups of students if I've got groups in my class as well. And these are the students that can see what's on the whiteboard inside my classroom. What I can do is I can make these people leaders. Okay, so if I just go to, for example, Katie Sampson. Katie's been working really, really hard in my class today. What I can do is I can actually make Katie the leader. Now, that's a really, really powerful thing to do, because if I make Katie the leader, what Katie should now be able to do is to go ahead and start actually annotating that screen as well. So if I said to Katie, for example, Katie, could you please draw me an arrow that points to the planet Earth, let's say. And so now I've done that, and Katie's correctly identified the planet Earth. Well done, Katie. How about now if I send it over to someone else, let's say Amjad Ali. Okay, so I'm going to right click and choose Amjad Ali, make Amjad Ali the leader. Now I can say to Amjad, Amjad, could you please point at Mars for me, please? So Amjad has a little think and can then go through and then point at Mars, so forth and so on. So not only is this a great tool for demonstrating things as teacher, it's also a really lovely way of actually bringing in the learners in your classroom. And thinking about things we might have seen previously on other videos where we're talking about question and answer and surveying and things like pose, pause, pounce, bounce. This is a great collaborative tool where students can get far more out of the activity than just sitting and watching you doing something as teacher. We can collaborate, we can create together, and we can learn together too. Yet another great feature in NetSupport School. Next up, we're going to have a little think about behaviour management. Now, it's an unfortunate part of a teacher's job to manage the behaviour of students in the classroom. Sometimes students can go off-piste, they can be poorly behaved, they can make some poor decisions, those sorts of things. But just like we've got a repertoire of sort of skills as a teacher in the classroom, just so when students are using technology, we might want to sort of keep an eye on what's actually happening on the screens. And what's really nice is with NetSupport School, and we can really easily see when students are starting to go off task a little bit. And I can see a student right away here right now. So there are a variety of things that I can do to Cole Fitz, who's clearly playing a game, and I just hovering over it, I can see straight away that he's on the Hey Dougie busy day badge activity. Now it could be that I'm in a reception class and this is actually an appropriate activity, but actually no, this is year 11 computing on a Thursday afternoon. So I clearly want to do something about Cole's behaviour. Now again, it sort of ties in with your behaviour policy within your school as to how you react to these sort of things. But one of the things that I could have done prior to this actual lesson is I could have actually just created a white list of approved websites that students were only enabled to view, and I'll show you how to set that up in a subsequent video. But let's just say in the moment I want to deal with Cole. Well, what can I do? Well, I can select his machine and go to lock, and that will automatically lock just his machine. Cole now knows he's in a spot of bother, and meanwhile Charlie over here is going on Facebook. So let's just another way of doing that locking, right click instead and just go lock keyboard and mouse. Now I've got Charlie and Cole sort of banged to rights, and Fox is now going onto an inappropriate site over here as well. It's all kicking off in my classroom. But what that gives me the opportunity to do now is I can actually go in, start having a chat with these students, fix the issues, have a word with them, and get them back on track. And that's lovely, because most IT classrooms, whether you're in a specific ICT suite, whether you are using sort of laptops on a trolley, Chromebooks on from a trolley, Chromebooks in your general classroom, it's often the case that you can't see all of your students' screens whilst they're doing their work. However, with NetSupport School, you absolutely can. So in a few videos time, you'll be able to find out how you can add whitelist and add restricted websites and all these sort of things as part of the NetSupport School setup. But that's how I would sort of stop those untoward activities taking place. I would quickly jump in, lock their screens, and then jump straight in to make sure that I'm having a nice little conversation about their behaviour. And that's how you do that. In this video, we're going to look at how we can open websites and other tools and other resources directly onto our students' and learners' machines directly from our teacher device. However, there's a variety of ways in which you can do these things, and so I'm going to talk you way through those. The view you'll have seen in all the other videos so far has been this view, where you can see the thumbnails of all of the students' machines. To get to the place where you can launch and whitelist and approve different websites is the option just here on the left hand side with the globe icon. But if you wanted to quickly launch something onto one of your learners' devices, you can use the quick launch option here on the toolbar. Now, the quick launch does not pre-populate things from the list that you've got that you saved previously in your applications and websites and whatnots over here, but you can add them in manually. So let's say I've got some here that I've added in previously, but let's say I wanted to just add in a website, and let's say I want just Google. So I'll put in google.co.uk, add that. You can give it a description if you want to. Click OK, and that adds that to the list. And when I go onto here now, I can just double click onto this, and that will then open Google onto all of the machines in my classroom. And you can see now it's starting to open up Google on all of these different thumbnails that you can see here in front of me. And that's really, really handy to have that feature. It doesn't have to be websites, it can be tools as well. So it could be Word or Notepad or Excel, whatever it is, PowerPoint, these sort of things. So if I was to, for example, just go to word.exe and click on that one, that should now load Word onto all of those student machines as well. So that's really nice doing that from the quick launch bar on here, but that's going to change lesson by lesson. What I can do though is I can actually go into this side bit over here, and I can actually set a whole lot of things in one go. So I can have approved websites, and the beauty of this is it means that you can really keep your students focused on the activities you want them to be working on all the time. Now you can have it there could be some specific sites, as you can see here, Minecraft, eBay, Amazon and Roblox. You can have those sort of ones specifically restricted if you want to, but leave everything else open. You can have a mixture of the two. However you want to do it is entirely up to you. And there are some other options here across the bottom to help you with all these sort of things, in helping guide your students with positive behaviours, where you can allow unrestricted, approved only, block the restricted ones, restrict everything, making sure that safe search is turned on. You can block FTP access. If you don't know what FTP access is, then don't worry. It stands for File Transfer Protocol, which enables you to sort of transfer files through the internet. But again, most of us won't be looking at that or needing it or exploring it. And if you go into the details bit, that just gives you more information on the things on the screen in front of you. But one little or lesser known feature is you can actually quick launch things directly from inside this section here as well. So let's say I wanted to open the Mentimeter website, not the one for making the quizzes, but where students sort of go to log in and do a quiz. I can simply right click on here. And there are some other options, as you can see. I can add a website, you can remove a website, I can close this at students, I can send it to students as well. And that's what I'm going to do now. So if I go send to students, click on there, and what that will now do, and you can see the icons have changed next to all of my students. And if I just go back to the display mode just here, I can monitor student machines. You can see Mentimeter has now loaded on all of these different student devices. Again, on a behaviour management front, there are lots of options available to you via NetSupport School. We could, for example, if students are going off-piste, again, like we saw before with the Hey Dougie and things happening there, we can simply go to lock, and we can lock individual or all workstations with a click of a button. We should now see all those machines now locked. I'll just unlock them. You can also blank the screens to draw attention back to the front of the class if you need to, so forth and so on. But there are lots of options in here for making sure that your students are on task, on track, and accessing the resources that you want them to. Gone are the days where you can say to your learners, and you can write it on the board, go to menti.com, and 20 minutes later they're all on the right website. No need for that with NetSupport School. It's very quick, very simple, very easy to get your students into the right site, the right place, the right time, when you want them there, without any lost learning time. So next up, in the previous video, we heard about how we can allow and restrict websites and different things like that. Additionally, with NetSupport School, we can allow and restrict the applications that students use, and we can do that using the option just below where we went previously. So previously for the internet and websites, we went to here. Alternatively, for the application students are using, we can go to here. Click onto here, and what we can do is we can see the applications that students are using. We can go and hover over each of these as well. What we can also do is go to the view menu, okay, and we can actually go to a details view. So as you can see, there are options here where you can now see the current applications that their students are using. You can also see the applications that they have open at that time as well. Just like with other screens as well, we can click onto each of these different students and see more information. And we've also got the right click option to give us a bunch of things that we can do straight away as well. So let's say me looking at Gary Brown's computer now shows to me that Gary, even though I can't see Gary's screen, the fact that he's on Excel, which is a blocked app or an app I didn't want them using, is not blocked because it's not on my restricted applications list. If I wanted to do it, I've got options to lock. I can show that too. There are many ways in which we can get in and do all these different things to help with our jobs as teachers in the classroom. But in order to add applications to our approved list, it's very simple. We simply go to the plus button just here, and we can add the application. So let's say we want to allow Notepad. We put in notepad.exe. And I go to OK, and that adds it to the list. And equally, if I wanted to restrict some things, I can go to Add Application, and let's just put in PowerPoint as an example. Once you've got your different approved and restricted applications done, so I can go like block restricted. So what that will do now is that's put that onto all of the available machines in here, and that will then have closed down and stopped Jeremy Oldwood, for example, being able to use PowerPoint because he had PowerPoint open at the time. Now, an important point to remember, it's really important you make sure that you get the correct file name when you're putting these things into your restricted applications. So as you can see here, powerpnt.exe is what PowerPoint is there. So Jeremy Oldwood's PowerPoint hasn't actually closed. So I go back into here now, though. I can go in here and I can go to powerpnt.exe, and that, now that I've added that to it and the restricted applications are there, means that Jeremy will no longer be able to use PowerPoint on his machine, and that gets me on track as I want it to be. Okay, so just block restricted, and that's all sorted there. So that's how you go about whitelisting and restricting applications that run on student devices within your classroom. And listen, what's lovely about all these features is that it really helps guide students to be much better digital citizens, using the technology in the right time, in the right place, as directed by you as their teacher. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Data security has never been as big an issue and has the importance that it has in society these days. And with that in mind, there's a great feature inside NetSupport School to help you keep your data and network secure. Often, a lot of the issues that we have around security is through passing around of viruses and malware and these sorts of things on devices such as USB sticks. And inside NetSupport School, we've got the ability to really help keep track out of and to block access to the machines inside our classrooms. We can do it really easily using the tool just here on the left hand side where it says control access to audio, USB, CD and DVD devices. Go on to the option there. And at a basic level, actually, forgetting the actual security that we talked about, the opportunity to just mute the sound on every device in your classroom, I think, is super useful. We can do that on a granular level. So let's say I only want to block the audio on a few people because some people need to listen to something. I can do that and sort of control, click and select some of those, and then go to mute sound. I'm going to unmute those now. But as you actually select things, you can see in the display here from a CD, DVD, USB, audio and webcam where the blocking and movements and restrictions are actually in place. So it's super easy to see that in one sort of quick, easily visible view here in the console. But I just unmute that for now, and I'm just going to sort of select everybody by deselecting just those few. And by default in my classroom, I would always make it the case that actually USB is blocked. and I would also prevent the opportunity to load or run executable files as well. So I block access, and you can see straight away the entire class has had that access removed. You might want to turn off access to your CD writers and DVD ROMs and all these different things. So you can read only if you wanted to. You can block access completely, and again you can prevent those executables running like so. Sometimes in your classroom as well, it's not actual sort of physical desktop machines that don't often have webcams. Sometimes it's the laptop trolley, and as we all know, many laptops do come with webcams, so we can choose as well if you want to disable those webcams. But let's say for some reason Fonz is going to be presenting to the class at some point in time because he is, for whatever reason, using Teams or whatever it is, so you could enable Fonzes. So you've got a real granular control over your CDs and DVDs in your classroom, your USB ports, the audio, keeping things nice and quiet where it needs to be, and if you need to, you can enable or disable webcams in there, all through this section here in NetSupport School. In this short video, we're going to be exploring the printing restrictions and tools available to you as a teacher using NetSupport School. I remember so many times students printing off their work, having their stuff printed out many times. The amount of paper and toner being wasted is huge if you don't have some sort of restrictions or monitoring in place, and NetSupport School can massively help you with that. So to access the opportunities, it's really simple to do this. As with many of these videos today, in the course you've been working on, you'll notice there's a bunch of icons down the left hand side, and as you would expect, the one for the printer restrictions is here just on the left hand side for the student print management. So all of your students are then listed in the class. It will show you their print jobs, how many pages they've printed, all these different things. You'll also have a list of all the printers that are available to you at the bottom here on the right hand side, and here is where your print queue would appear. You can see what's in there and so forth and so on. So one thing you might want to do from the very get-go is just say pause printing. That way students can send things to the printer but you can actually manage things far more clearly here should they come up. Another useful tool here within the print management tool, student print management tool, is the ability to delete duplicates. So many times students get sort of bored waiting, and so they'll just click the button over and over and over and over again. Sometimes even they'll double click it because they're used to double clicking a mouse, but actually it's only a one-click activity to click the icon for printing. So an easy way of wasting paper and other resources, toner, etc. as well. So tick the delete duplicates box. You could block printing completely, and as you can see, as you make any changes, as with everything in NetSupport School, it all updates live right in front of you, and then will push out automatically to all of the machines which are connected to your teacher console. And that is how you manage student print jobs through NetSupport School. So in all the videos you've been watching across this course, hopefully you've picked up on these ideas that there's lots and lots of little wins that save you time. Now, in education, we often talk about these marginal learning gains. That came from an old colleague of mine, Zoe Elder, actually. Check out marginallearninggains.com if you want to check out some of her great ideas around marginal learning gains. But we've seen some great examples of that through things like saving time with students being able to have apps and websites launched directly onto their screens and all these different things. There are lots of little time-saving features that can really be super useful. And one of those features is the idea where you can log students out. You can also power on and power off machines inside your classroom as well. So inside this short video, we're going to explore how we can log our students out and then how we can power down the machines as well. And I remember, my old classroom in my last school where I worked, 32 machines, and I had to go around every lesson and check on the and make sure all machines were logged out. Not with NetSupport School, though. It can do all these things for us. So to log out our students, you can simply go to the Manage button just here. And actually, I know I've just added the power on and power off buttons onto my toolbar. They're not there as standard. So if you can see those on my toolbar now, they're there because I've used the Customise Toolbar feature in NetSupport School to put those on there. But they're not there as standard. They're all inside the Manage icon just here, which will be on all of your NetSupport schools. So the first thing I want to do in this little demonstration is to go to logout, and you can either make it a group or selected students, and if you've got nobody selected, when you do the logout option, it will then log everybody out. So just to show on a granular level, let's say Ellie has had to go for a dentist appointment, but she's forgotten to log out her machine. I've chosen Ellie. I can go to manage, I can go to logout, and I say yes to logging out selected students, and you can see it's just starting to log out in the background here on the thumbnail view, saying signing out, and before you know it, thank you, bye Ellie, see you next lesson. All sorted. There we are with a Windows desktop wallpaper. But what I can do now, actually, it is the end of the class. It's the end of the day, last lesson of the day. I want to log everybody out. They've had to leave early for a fire alarm or whatever. Okay, so I just go to manage. Same thing again. Simply go to log out. And as you can see, there is a login option as well. So you can log students in as well if you want to at the start of the day if you want to. And you can actually do other things as well, like you can reboot selected clients, so forth and so on. And another handy, useful tool whilst we're in this section here as well is you can actually reset and lock a student's account if they've forgotten passwords and these sort of things as well. But to log out your entire class, simply go to log out because nobody's selected. Log out the students, yes. And now all of the clients inside your classroom will now start to log out, and you can see that happening right across the board. And I've saved myself a good 10 minutes of pressing Control Alt and Delete and the various other keyboard shortcuts to get my students logged out on their devices just by using that simple option, simple tool inside NetSupport School. Now they're all logged out. The next thing to do is power down for home time, saving electricity, saving money, saving the planet, all those things, and doing so very easily as well, just by going to manage and then power off the students, yes. And then they will start powering off and then they'll be gone like so. How lovely is that? Next up, we're going to explore a really great feature in NetSupport School, which I think is really good for learning. One of the things that we have to do as teachers regularly is to track the keywords and think about the keywords that students need to learn across all the different topics and activities that they do when they're undertaking learning in our classroom. And what NetSupport School can do is track and monitor those keywords inside the classroom in real time. To access this, it's another of these options down the left-hand side, and you can see the keyboard, the sort of QWERTY keyboard bit just here in the corner. So we click on that option there, and once we're there, it takes us straight through into our keyword monitoring section. As you can see, students are busy typing away, working. Here's Amjad Ali agreeing that the food was tasty. They're working on their bit. Now, what I can do to help me as teacher to track and make sure that they're sort of hitting those keywords in the lesson as well is to add in some target words. So in this particular lesson, it's a computing lesson talking about classroom management software, as luck would have it. And so we've got some target words of class, classroom, room, safeguarding, and teacher. And every time a student enters one of those correct keywords into their computer, so it records that on the screen here. So I can see that Amjad's hit the target once, but he's also actually had an inappropriate word, because not only can we have these target words included, we can have inappropriate words too. And I've put 2 inappropriate words just here on the right hand side. So I can see that Amjad's been writing a few things inappropriately. We've got Jill Berry writing some inappropriate things as well. But equally, Jill's also hit 2 of the target words as well. So this is really useful for me as a teacher to get a gauge and a feel on whether students are actually not only on task, but actually hitting those right sort of things and what have you within the classroom. Now, in addition to that, I really like this text field here. What I can see very clearly, and I can actually expand that if my screen allows it, which this one does. I can actually see far more about what's being written by my learners in the classroom. So I can see that, actually it was the word fork here was using the correct sort of tense, and so there's no need to be having a little conversation with Jill about her inappropriate behaviour, because it's not inappropriate. She's talking about knives and forks, and that's absolutely fine. And again, I could be rewarding somebody like Mike, who's been using the target words 4 times. Well done. But hang on, let's read this actually in a bit more detail. Now, this is clearly not what we should be looking for Mike to be doing in the classroom. So there are lots of ways in which we can be using NetSupport School to track, monitor, and make sure our students are actually on task and doing the things they should be doing whilst they're in the classroom with us. And that's how you do it. So simply add in the target words by going to the plus button just here. And we can type in the words we want to appear. We click OK, and they then appear in our list. Alternatively, we can actually look on here, and we can actually add these into the journal. We'll explore the journal later on in a subsequent video, but that's where we can add these keywords to the journal. Super useful for helping students with their revision, post-session, these kind of things as well. Equally, to add an inappropriate word is the same process. Simply go to the little button just here, type in the inappropriate word, hit OK, and it then appears in the list. In order for this to actually all work, though, the key thing to do is to make sure you have monitor activity turned on down the bottom. These amazing things we can see here, where it's tracking the typing inside this view in NetSupport School, will only actually work if the monitor activity button is turned on. If I turn it off, it will stop that monitoring, and you can now see the text is not monitored. So make sure you have that turned on like so, and then you'll see what happened previously, and then any more new words that are being typed into student devices. Next up, we're going to look at the random student option, which is the fourth option across on the toolbar that you can see in front of us. This is a great feature. So many times have I been in my classroom doing some Q&A or pose, pause, pounce, bounce, or different activities with the students in the classroom, and they're like, "Oh, sir, you're always picking on me." Well, this takes away that question of favourites or being picked upon, all these sort of things. What the random students option does is it randomly selects a student and takes that responsibility off your shoulders. To engage this opportunity is very, very easy. Simply go onto random students, choose how many students you wanted to select. Now, when you do this, it does play a little noise, which you may hear on this recording. But if you don't want that noise to actually happen, then you can just click onto this little speaker icon here, and that will turn that noise off. But I'll leave it on just in case we can hear it on the recording. And then to make it randomly pick a student from the class, we simply go to the top here and click on random students, and you'll see it randomly selects a student. And here we go. And there you go. You can see Mike Golf has been picked as the random student. And that's how you select a random student using NetSupport School. Next up, we're going to have a little think about some of the great features in NetSupport School for checking learning. Assessment for learning, assessment as learning. There are lots of different ways in which we might want to engage with retrieval or other low-stakes quizzing activities in our classroom. And if you have NetSupport School, then you'd be, a little bit remiss to not think about or consider using the tool to help you with this sort of thing. And there's a variety of ways in which we can do that. Now, there is the student survey mode, which is accessible just here on the left hand side, but we're not going to go into that right now. First up, we're going to go into this section just here called question and answer mode. When we click onto question and answer mode, then we get the opportunity to select a question type, and if you weren't too happy with choosing it here, there is the opportunity to actually choose different question types down the bottom here as well. There's a bunch of options and sound effects and things that you can have going on as well. So I'm going to go with the first to answer question first, but let's just work through the opportunities that are here available to us. So this one here enables us to ask students a question and then have them answer as quickly as possible. The next one, where I would enter an answer myself, and the students, after I've entered the answer, students have to enter their answer as quickly as possible. With this one, potluck, students are selected at random and then asked a question. Okay. The next one is very similar to the first one, first to answer, but this time it's a team event, so you can group and bring students together with that, and the same sort of thing with the team enter an answer. So if I go to this one here, for example, first to answer, I can put in some thinking time. I can set a time limit on it and these different things. And if I'm thinking about some teaching and learning strategies like pose, pause, pounce, bounce, that I can actually automatically bounce to the next student using this option here, and I can choose the number of students to include, so forth and so on. Okay, I'm not actually going to use that in this example. Okay, so with this question type, I need to actually ask the question to the class. So I'll just go OK. And so I'll ask the question. And what that will do is that will then enable an answer button to appear on the student screens. So I'll ask the question, what is the square root of 144? I then hit the Go button. And that option now comes up on the student screens, giving them the opportunity, after their thinking time has elapsed, obviously, for them to then respond to that question. While I'm filling the time, there's a little countdown happening. The students now have the chance to make the right answer, and I can go through and say whether they're right and wrong and so forth and so on with the options that are available on here. So I can see where things are going with the students with that particular question option. Now, if I wanted to bounce that to somebody else, I could bounce it using the bounce button just here. Or alternatively, I can move on to the next question. Or if that's just the only question I wanted to ask, all I need to do is simply go to reset down the bottom here, and that will set it back to the beginning where I get to choose my other options as well. So let's have a little look at what it looks like compared to the first answer with enter an answer. So let's go for this here, enter an answer. And so same sort of thing again, thinking time, time limit, so forth and so on. I'll give them less time to think this time, so I don't have to fill that time up quite so long with some talking. So I'll now go, what is the square root of 9? I'll hit OK. I'll now have to put the actual answer in myself. There we go. And you've got a variety of options here about hiding the answer, if my screen's on a projector so people can actually see what I've typed. If needs be, then there's case sensitivity as well, if you wanted to have that with some keywords or things that you were working on or hoping that the students would respond with. So now that I've put my answer in, they know what the question is. I hit go, and they get an answer box on their screen, which will appear after 5 seconds thinking time. Now they've done that, I've got a bunch of students who are responding, and I can see from whether it's green or red as to how many of those students have got it right or wrong. So if I hover over the person as well, so this is John Barrow, when I hover over John, you can see, hopefully, there we go, coming up now. Its student was incorrect. It answered really quickly, but they answered 24. The correct answer was 3. Maybe they were doing some other kind of sums there. Now, as teacher, with my teacher hat on here, I can see roughly at a glance that the majority of my students got that question wrong. Now, there are, 7 students who've managed to get that question right, but out of a class of this sort of size, a class of 20 or so students, clearly the majority of students aren't getting this right. So that, as teacher, tells me, right, we need to revisit square roots of numbers and cover those things again. So really useful tools built right in, particularly useful when learning goes off piste a little bit. And just as before, if I wanted to ask some more questions, I can go to the next round 2 and start that over there. Or if I wanted to go back to there being nothing there at all, I can simply hit the reset button here and I'm back to square one again. The other options are very, very similar, so with potluck, students are chosen at random instead, and they're asked a question, and then we've got the team versions of the first 2 types there as well. So that is the Q&A mode inside NetSupport School, supporting you as a teacher, sort of checking in and sort of dipping into finding out and taking a temperature of learning in the classroom when you're in the middle of teaching with a particular group. Welcome to this next video in this course on NetSupport School. Look, as a teacher, one of the most important parts of our jobs is to track and monitor student progress and sort of get a gauge on their level of understanding. And we can do it in a variety of ways. If you've been following the course through so far, you'll have probably enjoyed the video where you got to learn about the Q&A mode. You probably thought the pose, pause, bounce, bounce features inside here were really useful. The first to answer, enter an answer, potluck. And these these are great questioning types, and there's lots of opportunity for checking understanding with these options that are here. But these are very much sort of in the moment kind of questioning tools that you'll be using here. Sometimes, you know, a question comes from somewhere and we want to explore it. Learning goes off the lesson plan, but you still want to check whether they've understood things. And the Q&A mode is great for that. But what if you want to do some low stakes quizzing based upon things you knew you were going to be covering in that particular lesson? Well, sure, you can use Q&A mode, and it's really, really good for those short, sharp, punchy sort of question and answer sessions you might have with your students in the classroom. But sometimes you don't want to just hear from those students that are chosen either randomly through NetSupport School or by yourself. You want to hear from every child in the classroom, and it's important you don't have like those hidden learners in the classroom. You want to sort of get a feel for how everyone's progressing, not just those few who get chosen. To help with that, in NetSupport School, we have the student survey opportunity through Manage Student Surveys. You can see I'm just hovering on it right now over on the left-hand side. So to get into here, all we have to do is simply click onto here, and we just need to enter some questions into our survey. If we want to as well, we can have some previously sort of created questions available to us. If I go onto the question bit just here at the bottom, we'll see some previously created questions. And whilst we're on the topic, you'll see there's a question here, and then you can see there's some multiple choice options. Note how each of these options is separated by a comma. We call that comma separated values. So when we're making our surveys here within inside NetSupport School, what we need to do is both enter our question. What is the square root of 144? My favourite question on this course. And I can then go 3, 5, 11, 12. By separating those different options out with the comma, it means that those will then appear as my individual options inside my multiple choice question. So now that I've done that, I can actually go to add, and I'll add it to my list of questions. So I go to add, that's now going to be added into my list. And if I go to question, we'll see that question is now on my list. Once it's in here as well, what I can then do as well is I can send it to my students in the classroom. So I'm going to send that particular question. So I can hit send, and that question will now appear on the screens of students inside my classroom. And straight away we can see that some students are going through and they're answering those questions, and we can see live, and this is great in the moment. There's no test to hand out and come back in and mark. This is all happening live directly within the tool we've got available. I can see who's actually typed what question, and I can see that Fox has put 11. It's very close, but if this was a real class, I can now sort of dive into a question with Fox and did you type it wrong? You know, I can dig deeper into it. What I also like about this as well is the sort of the color coding, the color tracking that we've got in here. I can actually go to show option here as well. This can show the results of the survey to the students. So if I wanted to make it, you know, did you enjoy this lesson today? Could I do anything better as your teacher? You know, maybe you don't want to answer that question, but whatever you choose, you can actually choose to then, in an open, transparent way, show those responses directly back to your students in the classroom as well. And so if I just click now quickly onto the monitor student machines option, we can see, if I just sort of zoom in a little bit here, we can see that's all appearing nicely overlaid on the options here. Okay, if I dig a bit deeper and go a bit closer, we can see it actually even gives the percentages, and we can see that actually the largest proportion of the class have got the question right. However, what's a bit worrying is actually the cumulative number of 25 plus 30 plus 10, you know, we're looking at 65% of the class have actually got the question wrong. To me, taking a temperature of learning in my classroom, that says to me, Mr. Anderson, you need to revisit that question, that topic, that thing with my class again. So there's your student survey mode. There are lots of ways in which you can use that and deploy that within the classroom. Just moving across these options that are here as well, I can go to save as well. So I can save the results of that survey, and I can save it as a comma separated value file, which will actually open in Excel, which makes it quite nice for analysis. Okay, what I can also do is I can then go to another question, will you be telling others about today, for example? And I can then use that as part of my survey with my students as well. So lots and lots of things that I can do with inside my surveying tool here. The final thing to sort of shout about as well is this option just over here on the right hand side. So what I can do is that in the journaling feature, I can send the result of this survey along with the questions to my students and add that into their journal as well. So next up, we're going to look at a feature which has been added relatively recently to NetSupport School, but it's a really important one, something we're really passionate about here at NetSupport. And I know that many hundreds and thousands of schools across the world are really sort of tied into this as well. And more to do with well-being, obviously, given the pandemic we've all experienced the last year and more, but also feedback super important as well, not only to get a gauge on learning in the classroom, find out how students have felt that their learning has gone as like an exit ticket activity, all that sort of thing. But you may have noticed on the toolbar, and it's one of the features that's available inside both intermediate and easy mode as well, is this option here, feedback and well-being. Within the feedback and wellbeing section, we can simply click onto the option here on the toolbar, and it brings up our feedback and wellbeing window. So we can ask students questions. So, how are you feeling today? And hopefully your typing and spelling will be better than mine. And please note, you can, if you want to, after you've put some questions in, previous questions you've asked will appear in a drop-down list here as well for you to choose from. You choose what type of response you want. Okay, so it could be an emoji-related one like here, sort of hit, miss, or maybe sort of response. It could be a star rating or a percentage. It could be one of these sort of speedometers here, or fist to 5 type thing. You've got different smileys, so forth and so on. I'm going to choose the fist to 5 option just here. And once I've done that question, and I want to get that feedback from my students, and I will remember to put a question mark on the end as well, otherwise I get told off for my poor spelling, punctuation and grammar. I do that, and I would then click OK. Before I do that though, some of these questions, sometimes some students might feel less likely to respond if they have to put their name to things. So what you can do, which I think again is a lovely little feature, is the ability to anonymize results if you want to. So I'll tick that box, anonymize results. So I'm just going to get a general sort of litmus test, as it were, on how students are feeling in my classroom today. So I put the question in, I've chosen what type of response, I've chosen to anonymize results, I hit OK, and then the responses will start to come through on the screen here. And as you can see in the background as well, you can see the way in which it looks on the displays for all the students in the class. You could sort of get a rough idea for who's choosing which option if you look really carefully, but that's not a problem. And we can view that as a list like so. And we can see that the responses are starting to all sort of come through now. Lovely. Or I can view those as a chart. So I choose the chart option, and this option is now coming through as a bar chart. So I can see that so far the majority of my class, which is lovely to hear from me as a teacher, are feeling really quite great. But being mindful that actually, 3 of my students in my class are actually feeling a little bit low for whatever reason. It does depend on your class as to whether you want to choose to have that anonymised thing on or off. It's obviously helpful. If this was my classroom, I would probably say, thanks for your feedback, everybody. I have noted that 3 of you have chosen quite a low response. If you wanted to speak to the school counsellor, if you wanted to speak to me after class, so forth. Give them some options to have that conversation should they need to or want to have it if they're not feeling too great. Okay, but what's lovely is you can get a good gauge on general feedback from the class about their learning or about their general mental health and well-being through this really simple to use tool. And once you've done the activity with your class, as with many of these sorts of things inside NetSupport School, we can choose to either save it. So we go into save, we'll see that we can save that as an image file. We can print it if we want to, or if we're done, we can just simply close it. And that is the feedback and wellbeing tool in NetSupport School. In this video, we're going to have a look at the student toolbar. Now, you've seen in both the easy, intermediate and advanced modes, there's a variety of options that we have as educators, as teachers in our classroom to track, monitor, keep an eye on, support, cajole, block, allow access to lots of different things for our learners in the classroom. But they have access to a few things themselves too, and they access that and the options through their student toolbar. Now, you can't currently easily see that in this thumbnail view, so let me just zoom in a little bit down here using the slider to increase the thumbnail size. So you can now see at the top of these screens here, this one over here, here and here, we have got the student toolbar. Now, I will go into one of my students in just a moment so you can see that in practice, but before we do that, there may be an occasion where you don't actually want the student toolbar available to your learners in the classroom. Let's say you're undertaking some sort of test conditions kind of activity, or you just don't want them to have access to it. That's entirely up to you, what you choose. As we all know, context is super important when we're thinking about all sorts of things in schools, because no two schools are the same, no two students are the same. And so if I want to turn that student toolbar off, it's a simple process of just going to the option Student Toolbar up here in my teacher console, just pressing the button, pressing the icon, and that toolbar will then disappear. And you can now see that toolbar has disappeared from the screen of my students. But hey, I'm doing a video on the student toolbar, so I'm going to bring it back so I can actually dive in now and show you what that student toolbar actually looks like. So I'm going to choose one of my students. Let's choose, who shall I choose? Katie Sampson. Where's Katie Sampson gone? Here she is. So I'm going to go into Katie, and you can see she's working and she's hitting the keywords that we talked about in a previous video of Classroom, although she's using the word fork correctly in the right sense there as well, so I'm not going to be upset with that. She's doing some good work. She could maybe have written a bit more, but we're not here to look at Katie's work. We're here to explore the student toolbar. So let's work through these different options that are available to you at the top. So the first option that's available is resources. Now, you can, when you're setting up your lesson in NetSupport School, you can share resources with your learners. It could be a worksheet, it could be a set of keywords they need to be thinking about for that lesson, it could be a quiz, it could be a homework sheet, it could be all sorts of things. Okay, and if you had shared something with your class, that's where the student would click on there and then go in and access those student resources. The next option next to it is the objectives. If you remember, when we first set up our class inside NetSupport School, we had an opportunity to put our outcomes and objectives in there, and that's where the objectives for the lesson would appear. And we simply click on there and the objectives would then come up, and it's a nice handy little position place reminder for our students about what it is they should be doing in the lesson. To get rid of that, we can simply click onto the X in the top right hand corner, and that will then disappear. The next option across shows what restrictions related to using CDs, DVDs or USB ports there might be on the actual device. Now, I haven't shown you how to set those things up yet. That's in one of our other videos. But if I was to click on here as a student, it would tell me what restrictions, if any, were in place. Okay, so that's what that one there does. This one here talks about keyboard monitoring status. So it's sort of telling me here what the keywords are that I typed in on the previous video when we're looking at the keyboard monitoring opportunities that are available inside NetSupport School. So that's what that option there is all about. The next one across is to do with printing. And what this one will do is it will basically show you what print jobs are queued up on the printer and what have you inside your classroom. So if you're wondering why your printer hasn't come out, for example, that's where you go to find out about those things if you're a student in the classroom. The next option across here talks about the applications and programs that may be allowed or restricted. Now, currently there are no restrictions on applications on students in my classroom, so there's no options there at all. But that does tell me, if there were, what was allowed and what's not. It may well be that PowerPoint, for some reason, is blocked, but I want to use PowerPoint. I could then ask for some help from my teacher. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. But I could ask for some help from my teacher to get PowerPoint unblocked so I can use it for my work. The next option across tells us what, or if any, internet restrictions might apply. If you can't see that little badge in the corner just here, like you might have seen a few moments ago earlier in the video, that will tell you that there are no restrictions on this particular machine. But if you click onto it, you can then see what the approved websites are. And what's really nice about this is the fact that you can both choose the site you want to go to from the list that's appeared now here. So I can go to menti.com or wherever if I want to, but it will also appear as approved URLs files in the browser as well. How tidy is that? Really, really useful. Next over, we have access to our journal, and I'll dig more into that in our video about the journal later on in another video. However, if I wanted to access my journal folder to pop things in and keep a record of some of the things I've been making and doing during the course of my lesson, that's where I would go to do it. Next up, just next to the journal folder, we have the opportunity to start a chat. And by doing that, you can see now that two windows have actually opened, because the window is opened on my machine and on the student machine as well. And Mr. Anderson has joined, brilliant stuff. And so Katie can now send me a message and ask for some help. So Katie might say something like, so fantastic, got a lovely message from Katie. I can now reply and say, something very quickly. Don't worry, my grammar will probably get better if I wasn't typing as I am right now, but don't worry, I'll be there soon. Okay, and I'll hit send, and that's the way that students can get in touch through the chat window there. And when Katie's happy, thank you very much, Katie. When that's all sorted, we can close that down, and it will close that chat window down, as you've just seen now. The final option on the right-hand side is just a quick help option. It sends a little alert through to the teacher. So Katie could write in there, help, sir. David has taken my pencil, or whatever it is. Okay, you've got some options on alert teacher here: work complete, need help, urgent help. It could be like an urgent help thing, for example. We can sort of raise the level of alerts from the student from the students on there. Click OK, and there we go. And what's really nice on this front as well, where we can see when there's something come through on a help request front from a student, we can see the help request has gone. Got a little number next to it there, and I can click on here and I can see that Katie's asking for some help, and it's a really urgent help request. That's why it's red. You get different colours based upon the level of alerting through there. I can also see around the edge of her icon just here, it's gone red. And in fact, if I jump across now into here as well, and just hide that out of the way for a second, we should be able to see the red border around the outside of Katie's thumbnail is flashing with the little lifeguard ring as well that we'd expect to see, when someone needs some help when they're drowning a bit. So the iconography works really well there too. So I can now respond to that and help Katie as she needs some help with all those different things. I hope you found that useful. That's the student toolbar in NetSupport School. And remember, if you want to turn it off, simply click on student toolbar up here at the top, and that'll clear it off for you. Next up, we're going to look at a lovely little feature that's really useful for you as a teacher. Sometimes, you want a bit of help and support in the classroom, but it's difficult to get in touch with the technicians. Well, not with NetSupport School. As you'll see now on the top left-hand corner, and this only works when the tech console is connected to your class as well. So if you're not sure what that means, or this is a feature that you would like and it's not currently there for you, then please do speak to your technicians. But I think it's an absolutely fantastic feature, particularly when we're thinking about raising teachers' confidence with using technology in the classroom, as mentioned earlier with the work of Mandanach and Klein and all of that stuff. But it's this option here in the top left-hand corner, Get Support. With Get Support, I can go to here, I can send a message to the technician, I can just say, help. I don't think it will actually pick up the high-pitched version, but type in the message and hit send, and that will then go to the technician, and they'll know straight away that I need help straight away. Alternatively, I can actually go into a bit more detail and open a chat dialogue with my technician instead. So I can go to chat, and I can say, I need help. And that will then go and send to the technician. The technician will see that message, and they can then reply and respond and say, well, what help do you need? And I can say, well, I can't mirror my iPad, or whatever the issue is. And then they can respond, and they can either give some feedback live, or if needs be, they're aware of the issue that I've got now, and they can come and join me in the classroom, so forth and so on. A really lovely little feature. Access it, top left-hand corner, Get Support, and you've seen the options there. And when you've been in a chat and you're ready to move on and finish, just go to Leave, and that will then just end the chat like so. I hope you found that useful. Thanks.